Well, Brad, thank you so much for joining me. Why don't you introduce yourself, right? So, say, talk a little bit about People Maximizers, your journey, how you got here.
Okay, so I actually worked in the recruiting industry for 25 years. First 15, I worked for large national firms where I got some fantastic training, worked with some outstanding people, and learned a lot. And the last 15 years, I was a founder in two successful firms and learned a lot and made a lot of mistakes, lots of mistakes, which quite frankly were big teachers for me.
Yeah.
Now, after 25 years in recruiting, my passion really moved more toward coaching, advising, training, development, things like that. I get my juice out of helping people get better results and solve their problems. So for the last 3.5 years, I've been in what you might call advising and coaching. And my focus is on what I know best. That's working with recruiting firms, small to mid-sized recruiting firms, the owners. And because I've been I've sat in the seat, walked in the shoes of my owner clients. I know what they deal with. And another big advantage of what I've done, I've learned so much more after leaving being an owner because I get to see what works and doesn't work with other owners. So it's a constant laboratory. I'm dealing with and hearing about what people are dealing with and finding solutions and tools and technologies and things like that. So I'm in a position that I love because I'm at the front edge of what is going on and how to deal with it.
That's fantastic. I think that's something that we both have in common, right? So, not as an advisor, but we work as a single source of truth to a lot of small and medium recruiting businesses. When I, you know, talk to at least 5 agency owners every day, and it's a single greatest privilege that I have today, right? So that's fantastic. So, Brad, what are you seeing in the market these days? What are after pandemic, it's been, there's this kind of a spring effect in terms of, recruiting as far as I see, right? So everybody is recruiting left, right, and center. That kind of a market presents its own set of challenges. So just curious to understand what you're seeing in the market right now.
So overall, recruiting firms are busy. They very often they're working on more openings than they can deal with. So that's one piece, which is the ideal world for most recruiting firms. The biggest challenge is, in most cases, it seems to be harder to find the right people than it ever was. So I'm constantly hearing from folks about, we've got these openings, if you can find people that are interested and will leave. So there seems to be a real hesitancy on the candidate's part to apply, to show interest, and even if there's potential interest, to actually move on. I'm also hearing about bidding wars like the real estate market.
Yeah.
Candidate gets an offer at X, and then someone says, well, we'll offer at X point 1 times 10%. Oh, well, we'll offer that plus another 10%. So you're getting bidding wars.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like it or heard of anything like it.
Yeah. So what would you advise a recruiter in navigating these waters?
Well, put on your seatbelts and pray. That ain't gonna hurt, but that's probably not the ultimate solution. Number one, you want to work with the right clients that value you. That means people that will make a mutual commitment with you, which means they're going to pay upfront money to cover your cost of doing the search and not having you be a commodity working on the same search with other firms. It means that they're letting you work on the search rather than them competing with you on the search. It's amazing how things change, that you're working on A job orders instead of a few A's and a lot of B's and C's. So that's one thing that's really helpful. You can put a lot more time, money, and resources on fewer jobs that you're committed to, that your costs are covered, than you could spreading yourself very thin. Because finding people is difficult. So the fewer jobs you're working on where you could really go deep and do a thorough job, the more likely you are to find the right people and really shine with your clients. It's hard to do that when you're working on more jobs than you can handle and they're not quality jobs.
Sure, that makes sense. So, um, contingent recruiting, right, or the traditional way of doing recruiting, that I think is the largest or the most dominant business model right now. So, and of course, there are I like to think there are pros to it and cons to it as well. And some of the cons you mentioned, but one of the things that I love about contingent model is that it just really decreases, or rather completely eliminates, friction of getting business, right? Getting a foot in the door, right? So you're a newbie agency owner, you want a few job orders to work on. Would you advise a newbie recruiter to start working on contingency, or to say no, just go for a more commitment driven model from day zero? Yeah.
Look, I I'm glad to have people working for free. And you know what? If the moon and the star and the sun lines up, I'll pay you. You know. So from the client's point of view, sure. The problem is, on average, contingency recruiting firms, a national average in the United States is about filling about 10%, maybe up to 15% of their jobs. That
Right.
means they're failing on 85 to 90%. They're losing money, and it's an emotional roller coaster as well. So I, on the surface, it seems like it's a plus. Sure, get your foot in the door. I train newbie owners who, some of them have never been in the recruiting business and have decided to go in, to get retainers. It's about how you approach it. So I would say no. You're better off working with people that want to make a commitment with you, as opposed to people that have no commitment. And you know what? Newbies fail a lot because they realize, man, this business sucks. I'm being used, I'm being abused, I'm losing money, I'm doing everything I can on my end and failing. I don't know that I want to be in this business. As opposed to, you know what? I'm going to build more business, but I'm getting a few quality job openings with quality clients who value and respect me. So I'm going to say you're a lot more likely to stay in the business and succeed and like the business if you're working with people that will make a mutual commitment.
Makes sense. Makes complete sense. So, in terms of retainers and these different kinds of business models, how should somebody who's been working contingency approach this and convert more clients towards retainers?
So the approach to get more retainers is what you're asking about.
That's right.
Okay. Well, I think there's a few key things with that, Menon. Number one, when you find that they're already working on the job and they have other recruiters and they're trying to fill it, that's not fertile ground. That's a place to plant seeds for the future and talk to them about how you can help them solve their big hiring problems. You focus on their problems rather than just finding people, because companies don't hire people because they just want more people. They hire people to solve problems they have. So that's one piece. So I teach my clients that to real early on, within 5 minutes of the conversation, they know whether it's even a search to take or not. So they don't even go forward if the water's already muddy.
Right.
Number two, to do a really thorough job intake, asking the questions that a trusted advisor asks that most recruiting firms don't. You see, people judge us by the quality of our questions more than anything. So I teach my clients how to do job intake questions that stretch the client, have them thinking about things and covering things they never normally cover, and realizing they have problems they didn't realize they had. Now, this recruiter isn't another recruiter anymore. This recruiter is now, hey, this is a trusted advisor. I haven't met many of these. I value this person. This person is not like the other recruiters. So it's a lot easier to get a retainer when they don't see you as just another one of these. Then I teach my clients, once that is done, to explain the different ways of working. There's traditional retained, and traditional retained are the big traditional recruiting firms, Korn Ferry, Hydrogen Struggle, companies like that. And they're working typically with the Fortune 500 companies. They're charging $200,000, $300,000, $500,000 fees. That probably doesn't fit you. And then the other option traditionally is contingency. The problem is no one's making any commitment. No one's putting a lot of time, money, and resources on this. So you're likely to get a very unfavorable result and waste a lot of time and effort and money. And I have them talk about their past results. So, the contingency, that's not a really good route in most cases. Retain, holy mackerel, do you really want to pay $200,000 for a position? Now there's something in between. It combines the best of contingency and the best of retain. We call it a container model. And in that model, you're helping us, we're able to make a full commitment because you're covering our basic costs of time, money, and resources so we can do the job right for you. So now the prospect realizes, hold it, no one's ever told me about this before. This actually makes a lot more sense. Now the conversation shifts to a win-win mutual commitment rather than the other two models that have a lot of flaws. You combine the best of both. Sure. Then it's just a matter of agreeing on the upfront retainer. And now you have a committed client that's only working with you, who you're set up to win with.
Sure. So in terms of, so let's take an example, right? So let's say you're working on a search of a mid-senior level executive with, the client's budget is, let's say, $200,000. And if you were working contingent, your fee would be anywhere from 40 to 60K. I'm assuming you're working on 20 to 30%. Now, with container model, what would that fee structure look like? Like what goes up front, what goes at success?
Now that's basically the way I look at it. If it's a lower fee, like an $8,000, $10,000, $15,000 fee, roughly 25% up front.
Okay.
If you start getting fees that are 40, 50, 60,000 and above, then more like 20%. So somewhere between 20 and 25. So somewhere in that range. And then it's credited upon placement.
Sure.
So this is just your investment to help us do a fully committed, dedicated search. And then we credit it. So your fee is not larger. You're just investing up front to allow us to do the job right.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. So one thing that I want to talk about here, and I talk about this quite often, is so we get to see a lot of data across a lot of different recruiting businesses across the globe. So there's a lot of diversity in terms of the data that we see, and there is one single thing that that really stands out, and that is more successful recruiting firms. So when I say more successful recruiting firms, I define success as revenue per recruiter. Actually have fewer. So with an exception of founder-driven firms, right? So if you're a one-woman, one-man army, or just a couple of partners, it's your billing per recruiter or billing per person is going to be obviously very high. But once you start scaling beyond that is what I'm talking about. And the ones who have higher revenue per recruiter actually have fewer customers. And that is, I did not expect that, right? It just goes so much against, uh, your what you would naturally assume, what your instincts would tell you. And in fact, if you look at top 20 percentile of these firms and bottom 20 percentile of these firms, the difference is about 33%, right? So the top 20 percentile firms actually bill per recruiter 33% higher than the bottom 20 percentile ones. And
Absolutely. At least that much.
yeah,
Absolutely.
so, and it's and with fewer customers, and that is the,
And with usually less stress, less less emotional ups and downs, less conflict. Absolutely.
yeah.
It
And
becomes easier. People that the better you do, the easier it gets. The ones that are working the hardest with the most stress are making the least, and the ones that are enjoying it and working not as hard and treated better are making the most. Yeah,
yeah, I know.
absolutely. System.
I know. So, let's change gears a little bit and talk a little bit about scaling a recruiting business, right? So you've been doing this for quarter of a century plus. You've been been in this game. I've seen ups and downs. Um, what do you think are major challenges for scaling a recruiting business?
Well, I think the biggest problem is most owners go in to start their own firms buoyed by the fact that they were very high billing recruiters. So they think like high billers. It's about bringing in the deals, filling them, and it's about their own production and revenue. The thing is, scaling is really at its fundamental root, Manan, is about how do you produce more without doing more. That is a whole different thing. So in scaling, you are looking at processes, technology, and people rather than your own skill, experience, and ability. So it's a whole different game. So I could be $1 million a year producer myself, but my mind doesn't even work in the way of strategic working on my business. How do I engineer processes that are going to get a lot more done a lot more efficiently? What technology is going to leverage me so I don't have to do things manually? How can I hire the right people to begin with, which most recruiting firms struggle in, onboard, train, develop, and manage them properly so that they're producing well and they're not draining a lot of time and effort and stress on my end. That's completely different than being a high builder. So I think that's the number one problem, is the things that made you a really good biller are not the things that will allow you to scale.
Fair enough. So what kind of mindset change does it require then?
So it requires shifting. The mindset of a big biller is everything that's right in front of me now. It's tactical. It's working in my business. I've got this phone call to return. I've got this email to return. I've got this search to do. It's all about what's in front of them right now, competing for their time, and where do I put that time? It's all working in the business. Scaling mindset is about working on the business. What am I going to do that's going to produce better results down the road, but it's going to take an investment of time, money, and resources now. I'm going to trade off the in the business time that's making me money now. I'm going to trade it off for on the business time that's going to make me a lot more money with less stress in the future. Right. So the mindset shift is, what can I do now that's not going to pay off today that's going to pay off in the future? So it's an investor business person's mindset, completely different, because now I'm not just focused on what's closest to the money. How do I close this deal? And just, always what's the urgency now? It's the opposite way of thinking.
Gotcha. So you mentioned something very interesting, right? So process, people, and technology, right? So I think it's easy to understand, both people, and definitely very easy to understand technology piece for most people. I want to get an idea about, process and people, right? So the first thing, let's tackle people, right? So in your experience, what makes a really really successful recruiter, and how do you catch those traits while you are interviewing them, searching for them?
Well, that's a great question. Um, and it's a layered question because it isn't one thing. People are looking for one simple answer. Okay, tell me what you should be looking for in a recruiter. And my answer is, it depends. Okay. So the first layer, first of all, I would think of the first layer, let's just start with that, is to really get clear, what is my environment? What are the facts of my environment right now and how I want it to be in the future? So for example, is this person going to be candidate only, client only, or full desk? Because
Right.
it's a different type of person. There's three different types of people based on that, three different types of characteristics or traits you're looking for. Number two, will there be sources who do a lot of repetitive busy work for the candidate side recruiting? Or is that person going to be doing all that full cycle from sourcing to reaching out to managing the process? So that's a different kind of recruiter. Number three, what are the types of candidates and clients that this person will work with? What industries, what occupations, what levels? All that. Someone that's working with a high volume administrative assistants is going to have very different traits than ones that working with high level executives.
Right.
So the traits. I'm gonna back into the traits based on the answer to these questions. Another thing
Sure.
is, if it is a business development role, what type of marketing am I doing, or can I, so that I don't set this person up for just to be cold calling? Because if they're just cold calling, that's a whole different can of worms.
Right.
So you really have to look at all these factors. That's layer one. Layer two is, um, once you know the traits that you're looking for, you've got to then break them down into three components. And they're three separate components. If you don't break them down into separate components or buckets, then they all blend together and you get lost and confused. So number one, what are the innate characteristics, the natural tendencies and preferences of this person? For example, detail orientation is a preference or natural innate characteristic. How outgoing and friendly and desire to connect and talk to people is another characteristic. So you have to look at what are the innate characteristics and how do you measure them? You've got to have, in my opinion, the innate characteristics are generally best measured by a high quality assessment, and most assessments aren't very good. So that's number one. Number two, what are the character and value traits that this person needs to possess? Character and value is not innate, but in general, what you see is what you're going to get. Over time, it could change, but that's going to be, think of character and values. It's going to be important when things are difficult. When things are going well and it's easy, you don't identify character and value issues. It's when things are tough, which in reality is going to happen.
Yeah.
That's when the character and value traits come up. And the character and value traits are what determine a culture. So basically, it's what type of attributes do they have compared to the culture that we need.
Right.
So that needs to be measured in an interview with the right interview questions. And then there's skills and experience. Skills and experience is, what do they already know how to do today and how do they do it? That's the easiest. And that's also by asking the right interview questions. Now, I want to highlight something. Usually skills and experience is the least important factor because that is something that can be learned. If you lack in it, in the innate characteristics, and you lack in the character and values, it doesn't matter what your skills and experience are. You're not going to work out well.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. So in technology world, there is this colloquial saying that goes, hire for the attitude, train for the aptitude, right? So you can train skills, you can train for tools and all of that. You just can't train for the right attitude, right? So that's something that a person has to come with. Let's go to processes, right? So one of the things is, if you're high biller and go off and establish your own firm, you how should you be looking at processes? Should you be looking at processes as creating clones of yourself, so that they keep on billing the way you? One of the ways you would look at it is that how should I clone myself that that they keep billing seven figures every year, right? So is that the right way of looking at it? Is that not? What are your thoughts around that?
So your question is, if someone's a high biller and they start their firm, should they be thinking, hey, let me just do what I do and teach people to do it my way?
Exactly.
Okay. I would say that I wouldn't just start with the assumption that because I do this way, that it's the best way to scale. Because at the end of the day, it's going to be about not about my production, but the production of other people. And I may do it in ways that aren't the wisest way, but I'm just able to be that rare exception that can pull it off. I would really step back and say, what is the wisest step-by-step way to do anything, whatever it is, to make to source for candidates, to train people, to make recruiting calls. It doesn't matter what it is. What is the fundamentally soundest way to do it? How do we then have people do this in the quickest, most efficient way to minimize the number of steps and wasted effort?
So so when you are looking at processes, then, right? So let's take a concrete example, right? So let's say um, you've been in the market for, let's say, 3 years. You place salespeople at software firms, and it's you plus you've hired three or four other recruiters, but you're still at a stage where everything that is going on. You can you can keep tabs on what four people are doing, and from here you want to double in size in next 1 year. How would you start thinking about that scaling plan?
Okay, so I've already got three recruiters. I'm a top biller, and then I have three recruiters, and I can keep tabs on them and direct them. But
Right.
now, how do I go to six recruiters?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm saying not three. I have three recruiters. I'm going to have nine recruiters in next 1 year, right? So I'm going to go from four
Oh,
people
from four,
size.
including myself, from 4 to 8 or 9. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's a different game then.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would say this is a whole different game. I can't keep tabs on these people, and if I'm gonna scale, I'm gonna have to take time away from my billing. If I'm the top biller in this new company, I'm doing something wrong because I'm not investing in my people, because at this point it's about what can they produce. If I've got um, 7 or 8 recruiters, it really should be that if I'm the top biller and I got 7 or 8 recruiters, I am not doing my job right as a leader and manager, period.
Sure.
So I'd realize that. So the number one is to realize it's a different game now. My game now is, how do I hire, onboard, train, and develop people? Because if I want to double, it's not about me anymore. It's about us. So um, I'm gonna have to first of all have a come to Jesus with myself and realize, you know what, Brad, I can't be spending most of my time billing now. I'm scaling and building a business. It's not a practice. It was a practice. Now I'm building a business.
Right.
So I think that's number one shift, is to realize that, and and maybe I'm going to hire. I would first of all hire outside help to do this, because people aren't going to naturally shift. It's like gravity. We're going to keep going back to what we know, and we're going to get real nervous. Oh no, my clients are calling me, and I've got all these jobs coming in, and I can't risk giving it to this person because this is a good client. And it's very few people on their own are going to scale properly, because they're going to freaked out, and they're going to keep going back to their normal habits. And then they're going to blame scaling doesn't work. You know what? I prefer to be small. They're going to blame all these things when in reality it was really them. Here's the truth. If you want to scale and 2 years after you start the process, you are billing a significant amount of money, you're not doing it right.
Right.
Because the whole idea is you are now a leader, manager, builder. You are no longer a producing recruiter. If you really are going to be scaling and have 6, 8, 10 plus recruiters, you're gonna be in a practice. It's a practice with some other people that in your practice. It's not a business. It's not scaling.
Gotcha. Understood. So I want to go back a little bit and hear some of the most fun stories that you had in your long career in recruiting, right? So, what were some of the most exhilarating stories that you have from your days in the game?
Well, that's a great question. I would say actually, um, when as an owner, um, when we hired really good producing recruiters who were students of the game, wanted to get better, were coachable, and to just see them soar and see them apply what I was teaching and take it to the next level and billing 300, 400, 500 plus thousand and being a role model. Because what happens is when you get recruiters like that, it tends to bring everyone else up because no one wants to lag. Well, wow, I thought that I can only bill 250,000 a year. This guy's billing 500 or 600,000. Holy mackerel! What is he doing?
Yeah.
Because if you're billing more, it's because of things you're doing. It's not magic. It's not good luck. Good luck can explain months. It can't explain years.
That's right.
So it sets the mindset different. But what happens is if everyone around you is billing around what you are, maybe a little more, a little less, then the system is pretty much locked in like a thermostat to keep it at that level. So you've got to, it's a belief thing. It's all of a sudden everyone's billing 100, 2,000 a year more because they realize it's not that big a deal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic.
So
And
that's the exhilarating thing, is to experience the effect of hiring and training the right people, seeing them soar, and seeing other people now boost up because they didn't want to be left behind, and they realized, well, if he or she can do it, I can do it. What are they doing?
that's correct. And from your days of running and building a recruiting agency, what would you say was your biggest mistake?
Gosh, I made so many. Uh,
Hard to pick one, but
I was gonna say, how much time do you have, man?
well,
Really?
I got all the
So,
time we need.
so without going through one after another, let me pick a big one. A big one is a common one.
Mhm.
Keeping mediocre people, keeping low producing, not great attitude people, uh, just because you don't want to go through the process of firing and replacing and all that. So you're just like, I'll talk to him or her, and all of a sudden they have a good month or two, and then it goes back down and all that, and just continuing that. It's, look, if the person's not going to work out, even though it's not convenient, plan out how you're going to do it, and move on. So
Right.
that was one of the biggest mistakes. Also, and it's related to that, one of the biggest mistakes, I didn't know how to hire good people, because placing people has nothing to do with hiring.
Yeah.
So it took me years to learn a repeatable process to objectively have a scientific, objective way to determine, is this person likely to be a successful player on this team?
Sure.
So instead of 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 people working out, it became 3 out of 4 people working out,
Sure.
which is pretty good. You can build a business on that. You're not going to get 100%, because even if you hire the right people, things are changing, and but you need to flip 1 and 4 to 3 and 4 if you really want to scale effectively.
That's correct. And a lot of times, right? So you are not doing any favor to the other person if you're delaying, parting ways, right? So because a lot of times it's probably the person is pretty good. They have a perfectly good chance of being successful, really really successful in the next thing that they pick, right? So this is just not the right fit on both ends. And it's kind of your job to realize and move swiftly to correct that mistake.
But
um,
professionally, respectfully too.
yes, of course.
Because what you do, if you keep a person that's not a good fit, it really has a toxic effect on your culture.
Yeah,
But if you do it in a disrespectful, angry, unprofessional way, that also does, and that develops, you create bad karma. So you
yeah.
really want to do it in a way that's professional, respectful. Hey, if this was my mother, how would I want to do it? Now,
Yeah.
don't hire your mother, okay? And you don't
No,
have to
I
do it.
mean
But
this.
I'm just saying. Well, you're saying this is someone's mother, this is someone's son, this is someone's whatever. Let's do it professionally and respectfully, and not just say, you know, because you are having a big impact in how you handle things. No, they're not going to be happy and like you, but at the end of the day, how you do it is going to matter over time.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's just good advice. Generally, not just when it comes to hiring and firing. Just be a nice person, right? So,
Hey, I tried
um,
to hire my mother once. She rejected my offer, so I didn't have to deal with firing her.
yeah, that's fantastic.
But one of my former business partners, he once placed his mother. He placed her twice, his own mother,
Wow.
for big
Okay.
fee. That was a funny. That was one of the funny stories. This guy, this guy placed his mother twice for big fees, literally.
Wow. Wow. That's
That
funny.
was awesome. She had a different last name, so they had no like, you know. But it was that's one of the funniest stories.
Oh, that's crazy. That's
This guy would sell his own mother. Was actually true in his case.
well, every time I talk to somebody who's been in the game for as long as you've been, there's always one of these really really funny ones and bizarre ones that come out, right? So it's that's the
Oh
fun
my
part
God.
of being in this business. um, so, Brad, to conclude, I want to ask you a couple of things, right? So, the first is that there are, let's get a little bit more into People Max. There are, a lot of coaches and advisors out there. What puts Brad apart?
So, well, first of all, I specialize only in working with owners of small and mid-sized recruiting firms. So that is the market I know. There's actually very few people that do what I do that are, former recruiting professionals that are specifically niched within recruiting. So there's only a handful of people actually. There's a ton of business coaches and advisors, but not specifically for the recruiting industry with that recruiting industry experience. Most of them want to put people in groups and online programs and not do one-on-one coaching and advising. There's a world of difference to have someone that's one-on-one with you that'll take the time and truly advise and coach you privately versus putting you in a group. So that's another reason. Um, and I flat out make a commitment with my clients to do everything I can to help them reach the specific goals we set, that I really care and will go the extra mile.
That makes sense. And Brad, the very last thing, right? So almost everybody that I talk to has one person, one book that really, really influenced them. What would that be in your case?
Gosh, there's been so many. That's like interesting stories. I mean, there's been so many. And the last one I read is the one that had the most influence just because it's most recent.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got so many, but one that I think is a very practical one that really applies to what we're talking about is called Atomic Habits. I believe it's by James Clear. There's so many. The E Myth, Michael Gerber. See, I apply a lot of these these principles from these things. So I would say the E-Myth by Michael Gerber and Atomic Habits by James Clear are two fundamental pieces of philosophy and action that I apply. But I've been influenced by, you know, hundreds of people over the years. And I'm not even aware of it necessarily at a given moment.
Sure. No,
Those are very practical books as it relates to owners of small and mid-sized recruiting firms, in my opinion.
Sure. Thank you so much, Brad, for spending so much time with me. It was a real pleasure speaking with you.
Absolutely, man. That it really has been.
Yeah, and enjoy your summer out there.
Thank you, man, and you too.
Thank you. All right. Thanks, Brad.
Absolutely.